Hi everybody, I'm Bree the Plant Lady, checking in with an update on the poppies and actually just all of the cottage plants with regard to seed saving. Now, as you can see behind me, I still have a lot of poppies in bloom. These are ones that were sown in early January. So there's a definite correlation between sowing late and blooming late, and therefore harvesting the seed much later in the season. I'm gonna walk around the whole garden so that you can see firsthand the stage that all of these plants are in, from those that were sown in November compared to those sown in January, and I'm gonna give you tips on how to actually collect some of the seeds. So let me turn this around and give you an up-close view. Well, we'll start right here, and these are the poppies that were direct seeded into fabric bags and into the soil cube bags. The soil cube bags are pretty much finished blooming, but as you can see, their seed pods are not ripe at all. They are still seafoam green. They are soft to the touch. There's no holes opening for seeds to come out. So this is the stage where you do absolutely nothing. Just leave them be, walk away. I think they're quite pretty at this time, but you don't want to be harvesting them because the seeds are not ripe. And I promise you from experience, if you cut your seed pods at this stage, you won't have any viable seed to grow out next fall. You've got to let them mature on the stalk. For now, I'm enjoying the fact that I still have poppies blooming at Memorial Day weekend, and this is actually motivating me to think about doing some spring sowing and see exactly how these poppies would perform during the actual heat of summer. Really encouraged to see all of these flowers open today, and that's got my mind going in a million different directions about having poppies grow for a much longer season than just in spring. Well, as we walk through this border, again, these were all sown in early January, and you can see they are at that magic stage where the bees are going completely crazy. Honestly, there's a million reasons why I love growing these, but watching the bees is something that brings me an incredible amount of joy. So that's probably number one on my list. And you can see there's bees everywhere in this patch. You know, the different bees visit different plants. So in this cottage garden, you've got the poppies, Papaver somniferum, that's primarily honeybees. The larkspur is primarily bumblebees. And the carrots are actually visited by a lot of different pollinators. It's interesting, like skippers and butterflies, and of course Japanese beetles. All these different insects are active at different times during the day, and on really hot days it's like some of them don't really come out until the temperatures cool down. But the bees are really active at this time of day, usually mid-morning into mid-afternoon. Now here we've got daikon radish in bloom, and you see what's most attracted to it. Those are the cabbage loopers, my arch enemy. That is what lays eggs on the brassicaceae plants and in the caterpillar stage eats all your foliage. But they do love brassicaceous flowers, and I love how the daikon radish looks at this stage. It's actually really interesting. The seed of daikon radish right here in its immature stage like this is really delicious. It's crunchy and it tastes just like a radish. So, you know, that's another way that you can use it. I'm of course letting these go to seed so that I won't have to buy seed to be able to grow out for the next season. So we'll do a pan of this property border. Again, this was sown on January 2nd. And I was pretty nervous about how it would do, but as you can see, it's blooming great. And it's still gonna be a few weeks before this gets replanted for the summer season, which I'll primarily do sunflowers and zinnias, probably some sweet potatoes over here. You can see some volunteers from the summer are coming. Of course, lots of castor beans, zinnias, self-sown, tomatillas, That's the buckwheat that Aiden and I did in late March. Of course, there's a million castor beans, like that for sure. I have a lot of castor beans to get rid of, but it's amazing how many zinnias and how big they are. And I often find that my self-sown zinnias are the best ones. I can always transplant them. They tend to congregate right along the edge, like everything. Edges are magic. But the good thing with zinnias, they are really easy to dig up and move further into the bed. So as I'm standing here looking at this, it's actually becoming apparent to me that when I get the poppies and stuff out, I'm not going to be able to do my normal mow in place method because there's too much summer stuff germinating. This is the advantage of having, you know, a seed bank. Year after year, I do less and less because the beds kind of plant themselves, which I think is pretty amazing. There's no question the larkspur blooms a lot longer and it takes a lot longer for the seed to dry. So you can see here, you know, this seed is still not ripe because the seed pods are green. And here, we'll sacrifice one and open it, see what the seed looks like inside. It is black, so that's an encouraging sign. But when they're really ripe, they will be really easy to open. And I don't, you know, this seed might be viable, but I would not harvest it at this time because it's likely to rot if you collect it and put it in a bucket. Let's just drop that one there. And here are some poppy pods that are on the verge of being ready. Okay, so here are some poppy pods that aren't quite ready, but they're getting more ready. So if I can get the phone to focus on this one particular bud, which is not easy. You see how it's starting to turn brown, but it's still soft. But you see how the little holes have opened. That's what you're looking for. So you see this one isn't ready at all. But these two are starting to be ready, but they're not quite ready. So I wouldn't recommend cutting them yet at this stage, but maybe by the end of the weekend, they will be, what you really want them to be is completely brown. I'm gonna show you some examples. So my recommendation, if your poppies look like this, is leave them alone, give them a couple more days till they fully dry out. Okay, as I pan the front border, it's starting to get messy, and this is always a struggle for me because it's not time yet, because you see none of the poppy pods are ready. You see they're still green, they are not dry, they are not, nothing can be done to these at this stage. However, there are a lot of ripe seeds from the bachelor buttons in here, and so I wanted to show you what those look like. So you see the bachelor buttons will completely dry out. Remember, they're annual. And then this, that right there is what the bachelor button seeds look like. So you can just literally pluck it like that. And what I usually do is just toss it in a bucket. And once I get the bucket about halfway full, I just bring it inside when I'm watching TV and I kind of process these down so that it's just the seed, not, you know, all this extra stuff, not all that chaff. And then I will refrigerate all of these for the summer as a pre-stratification. Don't worry, I'm gonna have plenty of videos to show you this process up close and personal. I'm not actually harvesting seeds today. I'm just wanting to give you a preview so you can keep your eyes peeled so that you can, you know what your seeds look like to start collecting. For now, I'm just gonna toss that in. That'll inevitably grow next spring. But as you can see, really the only seeds ripe in here, some of the barley, right there, that barley can be harvested, and the bachelor buttons. Not all the bachelor buttons, but because they're still blooming, but there's a lot of bachelor button seed that is ready. So probably, maybe tonight, I'll start harvesting some bachelor button seed when it's cooler out. I don't suggest doing this in the heat of the day because then you're just gonna not enjoy the process. Do this with a cocktail when the sun has gone down and the temperatures are nice. So I wanted to give you an update here on the north fence, the south side of the north fence. Again, these were all poppies direct seeded into fabric bags. And you see how well they're doing. Look at all those bees. If that doesn't make you happy, I don't know what will. But none of this seed is ready to be harvested either. So, you know, if you don't want to be waiting this long, that's the reason that you should definitely sow your seeds in November. Otherwise, all these later sown plants are blooming later, meaning they are going to get pulled out later, which slows down the process for getting your summer plants going. Here in Central North Carolina Zone 7, that's not a problem. I was aiming not to plant tomatoes in these pots until the last week of June. I think I'll be right on schedule for getting the seed harvested and then getting them replanted. So timing is obviously the critical component, and it's a really difficult discussion to have because people live everywhere and timing and climate are different. Even just in the state of North Carolina, we have 3 completely distinct regions. We have the mountains, the Piedmont where I live, and coastal plain. And the timing for what you do in your garden is different, and that's just here. And so it's impossible for me to address everywhere in the United States or in North America or certainly across the world because I don't live in those places. I've been here in Central North Carolina Zone 7 for 20 years. This is where I'm an expert in. Frankly, I wouldn't trust any gardening personality that pretends that they know how to do it everywhere, because that is completely unfair and a disservice. And so I want you to watch these videos and think critically about where you are and recognize that what I'm doing might be different timing because, you know, my Zone 7 here is different than Washington State Zone 7. Or for some reason, people in Baltimore think they live in Zone 7, which I don't believe. But they're like 6 weeks behind me. So it's really important when you're getting this information to also, you know, check with local authorities, your extension service, your master gardeners, local independent garden centers to get the very best information for exactly where you live, because it's impossible for me to know what the climate is like everywhere. It's really not fair for anyone to expect me to know that. And it's, I think, critical that garden communicators like myself acknowledge that gardening is hyper regional, and you know, there is no one size fits all answer for everything. So yeah, always, you know, take my advice as inspiration. I'm trying to give you examples so that you can compare what's going on in your garden and think critically about the approach to when you should sow, when you should collect the seeds, and it's going to be different for everybody. Okay, so now let me show you the few ripe poppies that I have and the really easy process for collecting that seed. Okay, so let's start here. These self-sown poppies right along the edge were the very first to bloom, so it's logical that they're the first to ripen. And all I'm going to do, I usually cut the stems down to where the first crunchy leaf is. I don't want all the leaf matter to get mixed in with the seeds because, well, that makes cleaning the seeds harder. And so I've trimmed that, and now I'm just going to turn it upside down into a bucket, shake it around, and ultimately, because we had a huge rain yesterday, I'm just going to leave it in there upside down because more seeds are going to fall out over the course of the next 5 to 7 days. And I want the seed pod to be completely dry. So I'm just going to do that to any of these that are brown, that have the little windows open. And I'm basically just going to leave them in this galvanized bucket. I'm going to leave it out in the sun so that'll help make it dry faster. And this is day 1. I usually do this for at least 25 or 30 days. It's one of my favorite things to do, again, primarily in the evenings when it's not so hot and sunny. Just walk around and collect some of the stalks that are showing the signs. And so this is the patch that I showed last week in my weekly garden tour. this one plant is completely dry. So again, I'm just gonna take and come in and cut all of these stalks just above where their first leaf is. And I have my bucket here. I'm gonna turn them upside down and knock those seeds out. And again, I'm just gonna leave all of these dried pods in this bucket. I'm gonna leave it in the sun because you'll be amazed at how many more seeds come out over the course of the next week. I'm actually amazed that like 6 months later, when I use these for decoration at the holidays, how many seeds are still in the pods. They're really remarkable. So I'm just gonna go ahead and gather the rest of these, and then I'll just keep my eyes peeled over the course of the coming weeks to gather all of these amazing poppy seeds, larkspur, carrots, bachelor buttons, nigella, barley, wheat, basically everything that I sowed in the fall. I will be gathering the seed from in the coming weeks as the temperatures rise and we get closer and closer to the official start of summer. Well, as you can see, I have a ton of poppies that are not ready. These just get left alone. Remember, if your poppy pods or larkspur or any other seeds, the seed pods are still green, they're not ready, just leave them alone. I hope you found this video to be helpful. Be sure to subscribe to the Breathe the Plant Lady YouTube channel for regular updates on how to harvest your own seeds so that you can have beautiful spring cottage gardens every single season. Thanks so much for watching, everybody.